It's a pleasure to talk with Carolina Araujo, which is a professor at the IMPA in Brazil. And I would like to ask you, Carolina, if you would like to introduce yourself and to briefly describe the field of research.
Hello, my name is Carolina Araujo. I am a mathematician from Brazil. I work in the field of algebraic geometry, so it's sort of a field that lies in the confluence of algebra and geometry. So the very rough idea is that we are interested in understanding solutions of systems of polynomial equations in several variables. But the set of solutions, they have a geometric manifestation. For instance, you can think of the solutions of the equation x squared plus y squared equals to 1. But also this set of solutions, you can think of it as a circle in the plane. So it has geometric properties that you may be interested in. And so in algebraic geometry, so usually this is the type of object that we understand, that we want to study, solutions of systems of polynomial equations, but we are often interested in the geometric aspects of this solution set.
Yes, exactly. That's a very nice description. I like that about the circle. And so the reason why I would like to do this interview is that we would like to ask you, what do you think about the situation of women and minorities in mathematics, especially in Brazil?
Okay, so I've been involved in this topic for quite a few years so in my view, of course, this is not my view. I mean, the numbers show that we are that women are underrepresented in mathematics. So I can give you some numbers specific to Brazil, so that you have an idea of the situation. So I think, as in most countries, the number of the participation of women decreases as we go higher in the career. So while as among undergraduate students, for instance, women among undergraduate students, women are 42%. Of course, they are not equally distributed. So they're mostly concentrated in teaching courses rather than bachelor's. And then if you go to master students, then women account for roughly 27%. That goes to 24% in the PhD. And as faculty, for faculty board, I think women are about 23, 24%. But then again, if you look in research, for instance, in Brazil, I think one of the most important national programs of research grant is held by CNPq. So we have some grants research grants in all areas of science. And among the grants in math and statistics, only 11% goes to women. So this is the current statistic. So this is definitely very low. And this is something that we should have some policies that account for this.
Definitely. Thank you very much for those figures. They are indeed amazing. And we should definitely implement some strategies to increase those numbers, right? So the question is how can we do that? So right. How can we, for instance, what would be like, so according to your experience, how can institutions and society actively support women and minorities?
So I think that it is very important that we discuss this topic. So for instance, it's important that we make these statistics available and that we discuss it. So I think this is the first the first point, that the problem must be visible so that we actually see it and discuss it and try to understand the reasons. And so, for instance, I mentioned this CNPq national program for fellowships, and then but at the same time, if you look at the people that are making the decisions, so the board that decides these fellowships in math has 10 people, and among these 10 people, 0 is women. So this is, I think, this is the type of the type of thing that should not happen. That there are no women taking part in this decision making. So I think it is important that institutions, they be aware of this situation, and it's important that they understand that this is not a problem of women. This is the problem of the scientific community. That this lack of diversity is it's bad for science as a role. Not only it is unjust, but it's bad for science. Science will benefit for more diversity, for more different views on the subject. So I think this is a problem of the whole community, and we have to think of ways to improve participation, not only of women, but also other minorities. So for instance, in Brazil, specifically in Brazil, the issue of racism in the society is something that is very present, and it's even hard to diagnose the problems because we lack statistics about race and in science. So I think this is something that we definitely need to look at more carefully and produce more statistics so that we can put the right focus on the right programs. But for that we need knowledge. As scientists, we know that we need data to be able to work on the problems.
For sure. Thank you very much for your remark. Indeed, you mentioned two important things. So statistics, so visibilize the problem. And second of all, the fact that the committee that are actually evaluating in order to promote a scientist should be as diverse as possible.
Right. It should represent the diversity in the scientific community in the first place. And then, of course, we may want to go further, to make incentives for growing this number. But at least people should be represented in this committees.
Definitely. So, for instance, if we come back to the figures, you were saying that 11% of the researchers who actually got this research grant are women. So then, at least 11% of the committee should be. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if there is a right number, but it just looks very bad that there's zero representation, right? Maybe you would need more than one, just because you would like to increase the diversity, you want to listen to their opinion, you want their input. So maybe you would, instead of just sticking to maybe 1 in 10, maybe you want to have at least 2. I mean, I don't think this, there's not the right number, but they should be represented at least minimally in a committee.
Yes, and they also should be aware, right? I mean, our colleagues that are men should also be aware of the problem and should be concerned to.
Yeah, well, I think it's so I feel, but when I saw this, the 0% of representation, I feel very bothered. It really bothered me. But I think that my male colleagues, they should also be bothered by that. And just like when if I see a board of scientists in Brazil and I only see white people, that is wrong. That, I mean, it's visibly wrong. And so I think that this and so this is something that I think we should all speak up for. So
I agree with you. So something that is very interesting for me to know is that I know that you have been actively participating in different projects that are devoted to especially support women in mathematics. So would you like to share your experience in those projects?
So I've been involved. It was not really voluntary. It's somehow it happened naturally that I followed this path. But then, yes, you're right that recently, that in the last, I don't know, maybe 8 years, I've been involved with several organizing events and then participating in networks. And I find that the movement of organizations is something that is very beneficial in general for diversity. So at least I witnesses that this very clearly in Brazil. When we started to discuss this, there were no really organized group of women mathematicians, and then slowly in the last 8 years maybe, or even less, people started to organize, and it's I think this really makes a big difference when women start to organize themselves and listen to each other. So the voices become much more powerful. Let me just give you an example of some good outcome that we had recently. So there has been for quite a few years some movement of mothers, women in science, mothers in science, that ask for programs that acknowledge the impact of motherhood in a scientific career. And very recently, after years of pushing, we met now in this CNPq, this part of this program. So all these programs for scholarships and grants. So they go there. There are the open calls, and then there is a sort of a general database of curriculum that all scientists in Brazil, they have to fill up with all this information and scientific production and projects. And until very recently, there was no place in this forum where women could attest that they had children, and the last 5 years, 10 years or so, the years when they had children, because and now this has been implemented very recently. This year they got it. So, and I think this was a lot of pressure that came from this group of women scientists that organized. So I think that these organizations, just like unions. So I think this is a powerful movement, and I think that at the places where they see that there has been organization, I think there is gain, because I think the people become powerful when they're together. And so I think this is a very important move for women to organize and get together and talk about the current situations and think together of ideas of how to improve this.
This is amazing. Yes, I completely agree with you. This is exactly a good example about a concrete action, right, that was implemented. And this should be into consideration, right, when evaluating. So I think that is very important.
Yeah. So last week there was some of the groups of Black mathematicians organized the first meeting of Black mathematicians in Brazil, and it was I participated in part of it, and it was really beautiful to see them getting together and discussing publicly such difficult topics such as racism. So this is something that it's even in Brazil. I mean, we have this sort of this romance view that Brazil is a mixed color country where there is no racism, and this is not true. And so it's actually, I think this type of issues should be brought to public discussion and debate. And so I was very glad to see that they got organized for this meeting, and I think this organizations are very powerful. So yeah, and for all the underrepresented groups, I think this is can be very very beneficial.
Definitely, no, that's very powerful what we are saying. And I also believe that this is completely linked with the status of the society at this time. For instance, could you, according to your experience, how has this evolved in the past 30, 20, 10 years? So for instance, we couldn't be talking or having this conversation 30 years ago.
Right. Yes. So I think that, in terms of numbers, I think that if you compare to 30 years ago, I think we see more women now. I think so. Before it was, low. 30 years ago was things were very different. But unfortunately, even though now we are discussing this more, I think that if you compare with 10 years ago, seems to me that the situation is not really improving, and the numbers may be even slightly decreasing if you compare to 10 years ago. So I'm very worried, especially because right now we are in a very difficult moment, I think, with the COVID crisis, which affected people in a different way. So again, this is inequalities, I think, tend to be stressed in such period. Also, there is less resources. So when there is more competition for resource, so this lack of diversity is tends to increase also. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly, to be amplified. So I think this is a moment that we may need some public policies that must be employed to address these inequalities. So I think that yes, I think that at this moment, I don't think that the numbers are improved. So I think that right now the situation is not improving, and it's an important moment to stop and look, analyze, and then try to come up with public policies that address this.
Definitely agree with you. Do you have any example of a good policy that can be implemented?
So I think concretely. I think that there is about motherhood. I think this is something that can be easily implemented. And I think that many institutions are starting to promote this. So when women have children, then this gives them, say, more time in the evaluation. But I think not only that, but I think, for instance, I think when we organize meetings, we should think about mothers coming with their children. So it's very rare to organize a meeting and then think of childcare for mothers. And I think in general, traditionally, mothers never felt that they were welcome to bring their children to conferences. And so I think that this is something that needs that needs a special care. So this is something that needs to be looked at, and I think it would make a very big difference. But I mean, this is a sort of ways to try to fix some parts of the problem here and there. But of course, this a lot of this inequality comes because of this as a consequence of social tension. So there is sexism and segregation in the society that we live. And unfortunately, the roles of women and men in general are very different from each other, what the society expects from us. So this is something that needs to be discussed and needs to be addressed. If we want to address the problem, we have to look at its real roots. And then, of course, this is not going to be easy, and this is not going to be quick. So this is this is sort of a program for life. Exactly. That's try that things get more fair and more just. So I think I would like to live in a more just world, and so this is sort of what sort of guide my actions.
I like that. Yes, you're completely right. And so, for instance, I have a question. Assume that there is no major policy that is implemented right now. So, according to your knowledge, how do you see the reality of women in mathematics and minorities as well in the future, in the next 10 to 20 years?
So I think that will depends very much on our policy. So I think that I really hope that we start to address this in a more serious way. So I think it would be very, very bad for science if scientists just have a very strict profile and we see no diversity. So I really hope that this can be changed. And I really hope that science becomes more diverse and inclusive. And a sort of this is how I act so that we can make this change. So I really want to believe, and I do believe that we can make this change.
Thank you very much for your time and for those wise words.